Hello everybody, Anthony is here. In this video I'll talk about how I created these landing pads and what's so cool about them, that you can make these really like thin shapes and attach them to different parts, creating the stilts. So let's go watch the video and see how it was done. I've also used a lot of alphas from textures.com, and you can download 15 free alphas from there per day. I spent a lot of time picking the right alphas, going through all of them. Spent like honestly a couple hours, so you can see the whole list of links to those textures, to those particular materials in the description. All right, so here I have already a few blobs there, so I've duplicated that, moved it across, trying to make a most out of what I had. And now I'm using the blob tool to build the pad. So I want to build my main mass. And I build these kind of bridges that lead to the main bridge. So these little bridges on the sides, there will be the entrance and exit for the landing pad. So here I'm using on-plane tool to establish some points where I would put the stilts to, or stilts on. And then I use a sphere tool to connect this using the the line and the sphere tool. And I'm using the brackets to increase the diameter of the stilts, making it a bit thicker. And in that case, we can super easily create this quite a complicated kind of pattern of stilts connecting and holding this piece together. And yeah, I'm trying to bring a bit more chaos and asymmetry to the whole composition. And now I'm creating some extra supports in between the stilts. So the more asymmetry and chaos you bring to the supports, then the overall design, the more slimy and unorganized it will look. The more symmetry and bring to it, the more organized and say a kind of dictatorial it may look. If you build a fully symmetrical building, it will look more kind of oppressive, more like a government building. While if you build something with a bit more fluidity to the shapes, we introduce more of this chaotic feel to it. That means there's a kind of bit more freedom of character and maybe less organization to the whole place. So now I'll go from the side and I build a kind of like a fence. So you can see there I have my mannequin, and I use my mannequin as my kind of measurement tool. And yeah, I'm trying to draw kind of like you can call it like a protection outside. So ideally, we would have like a net outside that will hold any debris that fall out. You can see it especially on some like sea ships, where if there's a helipad, that will have a net around it, so you can, if you fall off the net, it will fall into it. Here, I'm doing a bit of a lazy job about it because you need to properly have a proper net, but since I'm a bit limited with voxels, I can only make a super duper net. I'll be just doing this more like lined, like a few ropes here and there to show that to indicate that we have the net, but not really have it. Then I'm making supports for the fence. And again, you can see I put them quite irregular. I'm not trying to put a support every like half a meter. Using on plane to add this kind of connection point or welding points for the stilts. And then I'm doing like some kind of extra shape on top. It's just a circle. So I'm thinking that there could be some communication equipment on the side. So I did this, used a blob tool to create these big boxes. And now I'm trying to do another fence using the voxel hide. I hid some of these voxels, and then I unhid the railing. Build another fence around the equipment. And just some extra structure, bring in a little bit of that idea that maybe they had something, they had a plan to build something, but they never really finished doing it, and it's just stayed in that uncompleted phase forever. And just adding a bit more of those overhanging structures, different thickness, different height. One thing I really want to do, I want to have these big shapes that are big and wide, and then really skinny shapes, really thin ones. So we have a nice juxtaposition of the forms. Here I'm using the move brush to introduce this. I like this type of wood damage almost that I can bring in. Maybe it's a little bit out of scale, maybe it's just a little bit too big, considering that the human is going to be kind of size of some of those scratches. But it's just the way the brush works, so it's a bit hard to make it super small scratch on the surface. I just want to throw some debris here, some sticks. And decorating the equipment. So now I'm using a stencil to introduce more surface detail to the overall thing. And you can see I'm just doing like a blanket cover of everything. And then I want to add a bit more noise. And I'm playing with different alphas and trying to rotate them, move them around, and see how they can look. I like this effect that I can make a bit more holes. This is pretty cool. Less regularities. This is really what I like about 3D colorize, that we can just penetrate the mesh with the voxels and create those holes that would be kind of impossible to do anywhere else, really. Now I'm just painting some cables, and I did it pretty much on every building. There's a lot more one could add, like some refueling station, or you kind of think about what could be there, some crates, more radio equipment. There could be chairs there could be barrels, a lot of stuff. So I finished with that, and now I jumped to a different sketch. That I already had established a little bit, so you can already see I've done the main shapes with the blob tool. Now I'm adding stuff for the stilts. And doing some cleanup. I'm using a voxel hide with on plane. So my voxel hide doesn't penetrate the whole object. It stops at a certain height, which is a super useful feature. Here I'm doing like holders for the cables, which I drew the cables using the sphere tool and on plane. Now I'm creating this kind of entrance group. And you can see I'm trying to align the entrance to the stilt stud. And I've created the fence and just duplicated it and moved it across. So for 1 second, I unhid the building this landing pad belonged to originally. And now I'm using some stencils to add details and making it smaller and smaller. And I can see here I'm pretty sketchy, so I'm throwing these stencils. They pretty much overlay on stuff, and I don't really care about it too much. It doesn't have to be perfect. Now I'm doing this voxel hide at a distance, so I cleaned up a part of it, and then I kind of painted this idea that there would be maybe some equipment if you open the hatch, and I'm using the big blow brush to paint some equipment and some crates actually. So I'm trying to do this bit of a layered design of like multiple layers of the bridge, a plank on top of a plank, or metal plate on top of a metal plate. Adding also debris and kind of supports. So now I just did a split tool on the crates and just split them to add some easy little detail. And I'm using split tool on this communication. So I'm pretty happy with how it looks, just adding a detail that will look decent from the distance. And I jump to another one. This one, it has a round shape, a round landing pad, and I'm using the move tool to create some holes. And I had some, this was one of the original landing parts which I did quickly before, and I've exported it, it turned it into voxels and removed the voxels. So now it has a bit of this leftover stuff that I'm trying to clean up right now. I did like how that net was kind of falling apart off the landing pad, so it created that derelict look. And I'm working on the kind of the stilt supports. So I imagine them to be kind of the thick metal plates, but they need to be, they don't need to be like full metal plates. We can cut holes into them. They will still have the structural integrity and hold the weight. You can see here it's already been recorded, and I haven't recorded the whole thing, so there's a lot of stuff here been done. But end of the day, it's the same process of using the blob tool and a bit of voxel hide and some sphere tool, pretty much to do everything. Which what I like about 3D code that you can use a really limited amount of tools to achieve a lot. And it's great to see people who use 3D code, everybody using different tool sets, everybody invents their own ways to do stuff. I just painted some cables. And just trying to cover that pattern, which is a little bit weird, with this kind of planks on top. Creating a support structure for this walkway. And adding details. And I like to do this stuff over and over again, right? So you could kind of create a modular kit with certain elements like the fences, the crates, the walkways, stilts, but I forced myself to do this exercise because every time I did a new landing pad, a new building, I changed something, I came up with something new, and it was quite a creative process. And before actually, I've duplicated the whole thing and duplicated, moved it across, and deleted everything but some certain point to reuse a bit. Here again, I'm trying to create extra supports for the stilts. And then if they kind of don't align well, I'll use the fill tool to fill up the gap, or I'll smooth it out, press shift and smooth out to melt the shape. Here, kind of welding in some extra supports that kind of just break the shape a little bit, add more detail that makes sense. Just detailing with blob tool, drawing little supports, little debris, whatever that kind of makes sense. And yeah, there's not much of health and safety in these structures. They definitely can fall off everywhere, which actually in Asia is pretty common thing. Just have to be a bit more careful around the corners. Right, and that's about it. So I hope you enjoyed it. In my bigger tutorial module Town Design in 3D Code, I explain how I use all the tools in detail by chapters. It's all broken down, and also cover how I texture it. So if you're curious about it, go check it out. The link is in the top and in the description. And thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one. If you have extra questions, please join the 3D Code Discord. The link is, well, right here or in the description, because if you have some questions, it's better to ask it there. Usually people know more about technical stuff in 3D Code than me, actually.